Chang and the Bamboo Flute by Elizabeth Starr Hill, illustrated by Nancy Lane. After a storm damages their houseboat, Chang's family finds shelter in a barn that belongs to the family of Mei Mei, Chang's good friend. Chang was born mute, but the music he plays on his flute is as beautiful as any voice. He worries about what has happened to his home and when he'll be able to play his flute in private again. The next day, the rain stopped, but the floodwaters were still high. Mei Mei and her family urged Chang and his family to walk up to their house for a visit. "Won't you come and play your flute for us?" Mei Mei's father urged Chang. Chang shook his head. His music was private and important to him, something to share only with his family and close friends. For the next 2 days, Chang and his parents stayed in the barn. Mei Mei and his family continued to supply them with meals. They were grateful, but they longed to be home. Chang was sick of the smell of hay. He could hardly wait to sit out on deck in the marshy air while his mother cooked supper. He wanted to see the stars again and to play music without bothering buffaloes. He was homesick. At last, the river lowered and calmed. The sun sliced through the clouds and glittered on the water. Chang's family said, "It's safe to go back now." Both of Chang's parents thanked Mei Mei and her family for their kindness. Then they all squished through the muddy earth back to the wharf. Smiles spread across their face as they looked at the houseboat. The damage to the cabin hardly showed from this side. "You could almost pretend nothing had happened," his father said. "I'll go on board first and make sure it's safe." After a moment, he called, "It's very damp in here, but steady enough." Chang and his mother followed. Chang saw at once that the cabin was wrecked. There was a gaping hole in one side. Some of the shelves were gone. Water had soaked their bedding and clothes. His mother sagged against the wall. Her face was pale and strained. "How can we fix this?" Her voice shook. His father answered slowly, "I don't know." Chang and his family worked all day. They pried off a loose board and nailed it across the bottom of the hole in the cabin, so the water could not come in. They rinsed wet clothes and bedding and stretched them to dry in the hot sun. They mopped the floor and dried out the cabinet where their small stock of food was stored. They coiled up ropes and folded nets. As the day went on, Chang's family spoke more hopefully. Soon he could be catching and selling fish again. Little by little, they would earn enough to buy lumber and other supplies to repair the cabin. It might take a long time, but eventually they will make the houseboat as snug and tight as ever. Chang felt better when he heard this. Maybe things weren't so bad after all. In the late afternoon, Mei Mei came over, carrying dry charcoal and matches and a basket of fresh vegetables for your first supper at home. Chang's mother took the basket. Her tired face brightened. "We'll have a grand meal. Thank you, Mei Mei. Please stay and eat with us." The girl agreed. She and Chang sat out on the deck, swinging their legs. The sun was sinking behind the highest peak of the mountains. Chang's father had let the cormorants free in the river to fish for themselves. The birds splashed in the calm water, sending out showers of golden light. "Let's go to the market tomorrow," Mei Mei suggested. "It'll probably be a nice day." Chang nodded, almost content now. In the river, the birds played one of their games, tossing a stick. Mei Mei laughed, her laugh ringing like a bell. Chang's mother cut up the vegetables and started charcoal burning in the brazier. Then she went inside, but in a minute she burst out of the cabin, eyes brimming with tears. "My wok!" she cried. "My wok is gone." "Ah, no!" her husband exclaimed. "We must find it." He and Chang and Mei Mei crowded into the cabin. The wok had been kept on a low shelf in an alcove. Somehow, they still expected it to see it there. But now the alcove was empty. They looked everywhere. It was truly gone. Stunned, the family realized that when the water swirled in and took out the shelves, it must have carried the utensil away. Mei Mei thought they should search the cabin one more time. They did, but it was no use. "I'm so sorry," she said miserably. "You know what they say? In a flood, a wicked river spirit always steals something." But why, Chang wondered. Did it have to be the wok? Gladly, he would have given up his checkers game instead, or his kite with the dragon painted on it. He knew how much the wok meant to his mother. She covered her face with her hands. "We'll never have the money to buy another," she began to cry. Chang's father put his arms around her. "Boil up the vegetables in your iron pot," he suggested gently. "Supper will still be good." She got out the old pot and made soup with the vegetables, but none of them felt like eating now. They ate a little, then stopped. Mei Mei went home. In the night, Chang's mother cried and cried. As he listened, a sharp sorrow stabbed Chang. If only he had money. If only he were rich. Usually Chang did not think much about being poor, but now it struck him that so many things were out of his reach. Once the village storyteller Bo One had told a story about a poor boy who found treasure in a milk jug, but Chang had never known this to happen in real life. The next morning, Mei Mei came over early. Chang tucked his flute under his arm. He and Mei Mei walked the path to the market. Many other people were out today, smiling and enjoying the sunshine for the first time in days. The end of the flood had brought a holiday feeling to the village. A tangle of thoughts stirred in Chang's mind. There was one way he might be able to do something for his mother. There was one painful way. When they reached the market, Mei Mei led him to a row of small shops lining one side of the street. Everything was more expensive here than in the stalls that filled the market square. Mei Mei couldn't afford to buy in these places, but she liked to look in the windows and pretend. "Maybe I'll get some of those silk flowers," she said with a giggle. "They're prettier than cheap paper ones." The next shop had fancy bowls and cups in the window. "Or the rice bowl shaped like a turtle," Mei Mei said. The last window was full of cooking utensils, including woks. One of these caught Chang's attention. It was even handsomer than his mother's had been. It was bigger and the handle was made of polished wood, and a lid came with it. His mother's had not had a lid. Chang wanted this wok desperately, but the price on it made him feel poorer than ever. He moved on. At one of the stalls, Mei Mei bought a small almond cake for each of them. They were near Zhao, the trader's booth. Chang looked over the merchandise. The thoughts that had been stirring in his head grew clearer. He knew Zhao usually has some old pots and pans. Sure enough, amid all the rest of the junk, there was a cheap wok. Not fine, not well made, not large, but a wok at least. He nudged Mei Mei near Zhao's booth. "I don't want to see that awful man again," Mei Mei whispered. "We don't even have anything to trade." Chang ignored this. He stepped over to the booth. Hard as it was, he did have something to trade. He touched Zhao's sleeve and pointed to the wok. Then he held up his flute. The trader looked at Chang's offering and sneered. Who would want that? It's nothing but a little bamboo stick. It's not, Mei said hotly. It's a flute, and all he wants for it is that old wok. Never, Zhao said indignantly. I might give you a box of pencil for it, but nothing more. Chang shook his head. It has to be the wok, Mei repeated stubbornly. Well, it won't be, Zhao retorted. The argument went back and forth between them. Louder and louder, people gathered. Then a kindly voice asked, Is that you, Mei? Chang and Mei turned to Bo Wan in the crowd. The blind storyteller hobbled slowly towards them. Mei answered, Yes, it's me. Quickly, she explained about the loss of the wok and the trade Chang wanted to make. I made you a fair offer, Zhao said. Pencils for a stick, he laughed heartedly. Some in the crowd laughed too, but others looked at the flute curiously. I'd like to hear a tune, a man called out. Chang hesitated, embarrassed. Never in his life had he played for strangers. To them, his music might be a poor thing, laughable, like his voice. Go on, boy, play, Bo Wan suggested quietly. There was a silence. Chang stood frozen. The group around him was quite large now. Play, Bo Wan said again, more urgently. Chang realized that this might be his last chance ever to make music. Suddenly, he didn't mind the crowd. Let them think whatever they liked. He began to play. At first, the notes were shaky, but then they steadied. The melody grew firmer, full of sounds of his world. There were sounds that belonged to all people too. The murmurs of the river that gave them a good life, and the drumming of long rains that could take it away again. Breezes in a bamboo grove, the springtime peeping off frogs. The crowd listened attentively. Chang went on. He played the ancient chants the fishermen sang as they pulled their rafts in the evening. Some people nodded, recognizing the tunes. They were pleased. Bo Wan untied a kerchief and took out a coin. He threw it at Chang's feet. Chang was surprised by this. For a moment, he didn't know what to make of it. Then he realized it was how people paid the old man to tell his stories. A few people in the crowd noticed. Now that Bo Wan had given them the idea, they too stepped forward to throw coins. The boy plays well, someone said, and more coins were thrown. When Chang finally stopped playing, there was a pile of money around his feet. Zhao cleared his throat. Well, maybe somebody would like to have the flute after all, he said grudgingly. Who can offer me a good trade for it? Several people spoke up, but Bo Wan advised, Count your money first, Chang. Chang scooped up the coins and counted them. He was amazed at how much there was. He remembered the wok in the shop and saw that he had enough money to buy it. He had found his treasure, not in a milk jug, but inside himself, here in the market square. He looked at Mei, his face beaming with happiness, and tugged at his arm. They ran to the store. Chang pointed out the wok to the shopkeeper and poured his money on the table. The shopkeeper counted carefully, then gave Chang a few coins back. He put the wok in the box. Would you like to have it wrapped as a gift, he asked. Wrapped as a gift. So this was how it felt to be rich, Chang nodded in delight. The shopkeeper got a fine sheet of paper printed with butterflies. It pays to shop in a good place, Chang thought. Outside, the noodle man was calling wontons and rice sticks, noodle nest, and bean threads. Chang still had a little money left to spend, and his mother would need something to cook in her new wok. Fried bean threads. Chang could almost taste them already.